Yeah, what's going on, man? It's Unc talking to my nephews and my nieces. All right, so coming up, man, we got a lot going on, and a lot of this is affecting the black community. And so for my nephews and my nieces, man, I want y'all to stop. I'm asking y'all to stop worrying so much about being on social media, um, getting your likes up, twerking and doing stupid shit. I want y'all to start paying attention to what's going on in the world. So basically, what's happening now is there's a war. Now I ain't talking about Israel and Hamas and all that shit, Germany and Ukraine. I ain't talking about what's going on like that shit like that. But there's a war in America, and this election is the most important election for black people. This election, like they was talking about the Obama election was important. Do not be misled that this up and coming election is the most important election in black people's lives. And we must, as black people, understand how important it is to be on top of your game when you're voting. And I'm going to tell y'all, get Biden. This is me personally. Get Biden out of office. Do not vote that man in office. And do not, if Camilla or either Michelle Obama run, don't vote for them. Because they are not going to do anything for black people. Nothing. Kamala Harris is not going to do anything for black people. And we know Michelle Obama is going to do everything for homosexuals. She's not going to do anything for black people. Michelle Obama is going to do everything for homosexuals. She's not going to do anything for black people. So I'm asking y'all, I'm going to vote for Trump. But anyway, let's do the history of let's do some history on the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And let's find out why so many black people want to be Democrats. So check this out. I found this on YouTube, man. And
of younger African Americans are puzzled by. This is in contrast to the early political association with the Republican Party. We're going to take it back.
I got this off Comedy Hype. This is Comedy Hype's thing. So I want y'all to check out Comedy Hype's page, Comedy Hype. So I got this off his
and
page.
Look at the relationship of both parties to see why the majority of black people switched from Republican to Democrat. Blacks were in alignment of the Republican Party when it was first created. Republicans were the ones who ultimately opposed the institution of slavery as the means of business, aka pro-abolition, for the country. And with this very general fact, it was already understandable why they were in support of the Republicans. An article entitled The Republican Party and African Americans, The Real History by David Greensburg, he states, founded in 1854, the Republican Party promoted African American equality for its first 2 decades. Abraham Lincoln and the radical Republicans in Congress fought to end slavery and give black men full citizenship.
Okay, so there's a fact. This is the fact. The fact. This is a fact that the Republican Party were the party that said no more slavery. We're no longer in the United States of America going to enslave black people for money, for financial gain. We're not doing that anymore. This is a fact. This is a fact. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican. And in Abraham Lincoln's term, Abraham Lincoln was the president, a Republican, that ultimately made Congress say, yo, we done with slavery. We're not going to do this no more. We're not going to enslave black people no more for profit. We're not doing that no more. Okay, it's understandable, right? Okay.
For that much, Bush and company can claim a worthy lineage. The formal election of the Republican president Abraham Lincoln provided black men at least with some level of social access. The election and the presidency of Abraham Lincoln is the foundation of the relationship between the Republican Party and black people. At the same time, the Democrats were in favor of slavery, as they were the primary breadwinners of the economy due to the capital created by free labor.
Okay, now y'all heard what he just said. I want you nephews and nieces, watch Roots. Please watch the movie Roots. Sit down. It's like a week movie. Watch it. If y'all can sit there and watch a series of Empire, a series of What's the other one 50 Cent got? If you can watch a series of BMF, a series of Girlfriends, a series of Ignorance, watch Roots. I want y'all to sit down and watch the movie ROOTS. It's called Roots. Watch that movie. It's a long series. Watch it. So basically, the Democratic Party was the party that said they still wanted slaves. They was opposed to freeing the slaves. The Democratic Party was opposed to freeing slaves.
Victory of the Union Army in the Civil War, we began to see the prominent individual black Republicans gain power. Perhaps the most famous of this group is Frederick Douglass. Douglass was a staunch reporter of the Republican Party and had lofty status as an orator and activist during the same time of the party's creation.
Frederick Douglass was a Republican. Frederick Douglass was a Republican. Frederick Douglass was a Republican.
According to a piece entitled A Perspective of an African American Republican in Tarrant County by Chaplain Rich Stallman, Frederick Douglass serves as a confidant to Abraham Lincoln and is credited by the general public as the reason for any social gains given to African Americans by Lincoln. He's famously quoted saying, "I am a Republican, a black guy in the wool Republican, and I never intend to belong to any other party than the party of freedom and progress." This overall sentiment was shared with many members of the black community at the time, a stark contrast from the current perspective we have on Republicans.
It says a lot that Republicans only like a certain type of black man. Tell me there's a justification for Herman Cain being considered for the Fed. Tell me that Ben Carson should be in charge of HUD because he lived in the project.
There was another rising public figure out of the state of Texas who was in support of the Republican Party by the name of William Madison McDonald. He was the first black millionaire from Texas, and his biggest social priorities were the advancement of blacks, poor whites, Hispanic, and the dynamic of chronic unemployment. In a groundbreaking move, he would go on to open up Fort first African-American bank in collaboration with the Freemasons. To further highlight how beneficial this association between blacks and Republicans was, a quote by Reedy Carey referenced by the Stoglin article states, "In 1890, Bill McDonald was appointed county chairman of the Republican Party. Most blacks were Republican at the time. In 1892, he was among the 120 black delegates to the Republican National Convention in Minneapolis, Minnesota. In 1894, he was made state chairman of the Republican Party in Texas. Time proved that Bill McDonald was a crafty politician, a shrewd businessman, and a believer in self-help. Considering the current political landscape that blacks have..."
Now we have to take account of something. 1890. This is 1890. This is still where white people wasn't really effing with black people. So black people had to get their own. Black people had their own land. They had their own property. They had their own stores. They had their own everything. Now, pay attention. What's going on? This man right here.
To the Democratic Party.
Pay attention.
Time proved that Bill McDonald was a crafty...
Bill McDonald. He said Bill McDonald was one of the first black millionaires in 1890. Can you imagine being a millionaire in 1890? A millionaire in 1890. He was one of the first black millionaires. Now pay attention. So basically, use your head. Use your thinking. A black man in a segregated society. A segregated society where still, even though Abraham Lincoln said what he said and did what he did, but you still got these whites that didn't like black people, didn't want black people to be their equal. You still had the sprinkling of them. And now you got the Democratic Party that's still out here riding around with sheets on their head. But here's a black millionaire. Can you imagine what was happening to him? And the fact that he was the only, in 1890, he was the only black millionaire that was accounted for. So you telling me that he was the only black millionaire? He was the only black millionaire? No, there was plenty black people that were millionaires and thousandaires. Being a thousandaire was fucking something. Was amazing back then in 1890. Being a thousandaire. We talking about working a week for a nickel. This man was people out here thousandaires. Like we walk around with thousands in our pocket like it ain't nothing now, but You talking about 1890 being a thousandaire. Hell, being $100 was a fucking big deal. Back then, 1890, hell, if you got $100 in your pocket, damn, nigga, you the shit. This is what we talking about. Now, you think this man's the only man, Bill? No, it was plenty of them. But listen to what was going on. Now, these people had their own property, their own everything. So what they was doing at this time was uplifting other blacks to get their money right, get property, buy shit, buy things. Now, watch what happens. Watch what happens when black people start getting money, when black people start buying property, when black people start having things. Watch what happens.
Politician, a shrewd businessman, and a believer in self-help. Considering the current political landscape that blacks have to the Democratic Party, it could be quite surprising to learn that the Republican Party was more responsible in playing a more significant role in the struggle of freedom. Yet, this beneficial relationship will only last for about 10 to 15 years. In the Greenberg article, he states as early as 1876, not 1960, as the Philadelphia Convention suggested, GOP leaders began to abandon black Americans. In that year's presidential election, Ohio Republican Rutherford B. Hayes agreed to withdraw federal troops from the South in exchange for Southern Democratic support, also known as the Compromise of 1877. Democrats seized power in the South and ushered in legislative segregation. This dynamic set the foundation for what would be known as Jim Crow laws in the South, and can be seen as the foundation of the current relationship between the black community and the Republican Party. Subsequently, black people began to flee to northern states, aka the Great Migration, from
Okay, what happened was in the South, black people had property, had land, had a whole lot of stuff, and they were Republicans. Now we talking about the South. Now you gotta understand, slavery and all this was going on in the South, and this is where a lot of the black people were at, because this is where the slaves was at. They were more so in the South. So when black people were Republican and these white Southerners, these white Southerners saw that black people was doing their thing, i.e., the Tulsa burning, what was the movie? The movie Vin Rames was in, Mississippi Burn, all those movies where black people had, this Republicans. What happened was these GOPs, these Democratic GOPs, the good old boys, they got together, i.e., comes the white sheets. This is where the white sheets come at, because the white boys down there saw that these black people were just as equal as them white people. Hell, it was white people. It was black people had more money than white people. Blacks had a lot. I'm talking about lot. Like black people had homes. Black people had pianos in their house. Black people had bathrooms in their house. White people still was using outhouses. Black people had bathrooms in their house. Black people had pianos. Nigga got a piano. You remember on what was the movie Vin Rames is on, where the white man got mad because of Vin Rames got mad because Lester. Was it Lester? Lester had a piano. Remember Lester was playing the piano and was giving piano lessons? Yeah. They got mad. Them old white Southerners got mad because black people was doing so great in the South. Republicans. They scared them. I.e., the Ku Klux Klan came in and told them,
1910 until 1940,
if y'all vote,
where Democratic political organizers were said to be more welcoming, while the Republican Party began to enact heavy segregation. This trend would continue into the 20th century during the presidency of Franklin D. Roosevelt. The Great Depression was a catastrophic economical period where many Americans were suffering financially during Roosevelt's term. Unfortunately, blacks were in the worst conditions and received measurable gains as a result of policies signed by Roosevelt. One of those policies was the New Deal. This point is further validated in the aforementioned article by Greenberg in a statement saying, the black shift to the Democratic Party crystallized under President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Though FDR won just 23% of the black vote in 1932, he subsequently expanded that support with his relief policies.
So what happened was, during the shift, what happened with the shift was the Republican blacks that had the money, they were doing a lot, but they couldn't do but so much. And you talking about black millionaires, they couldn't do so much. And then you got a lot of the Ku Klux Klan came about. The Ku Klux Klan came about, and they ran a lot of the rich black Republicans that had money, scared them, they ran them up north. So now, when Roosevelt came in, Roosevelt, which was a Democrat, Roosevelt signed this law, and he said that, hey, y'all want some help? Man, come on over here to the Democrat Party. We'll help y'all. And blacks went over to the Democratic Party.
Oppression affected black Americans disproportionately, and programs such as Civilian Conservation Corps and Public Works Administration gave them much needed aid. According to the Huffington Post article, FDR also desegregated the military and other social institutions, which certainly gave him plenty of favor with the black voters. The most recent political occurrence that solidified the relationship between blacks, Democrats, and Republicans was the 1964 Civil Rights Bill. An excerpt from the Origins article states the following: the foes of the 1964 law includes rising GOP stars as Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater and Texas Senator aspirant and future President George H.W. Bush. Goldwater and Bush foresaw their future election successes rested on the Southern and Western conservatives. This statement perfectly exemplifies the current perception many blacks have of the Republican Party and their conservative values. And even more obvious examples of political aggression from Republicans was stated in the next passage of the article and stated in his 1964 presidential bid. Goldwater ran Operation Dixie, which courted Southern whites and seated the black folk entirely. Goldwater lost badly, but 4 years later the approach worked. Republican Richard Nixon won in the 1968 election on the Southern strategy that stressed law and order and tapped into the white anxieties about black violence. This strategy of black voter abandonment and white fear manipulation has been highly effective in years of conservative Republicans' success. It was during the Civil Rights Movement where this strategy was introduced and when the exact current relationship between the Democrats and African American communities came to be. Since then, in the following decades, we have seen an implementation of the black community automatically voting blue out of tradition. This dynamic
you got to also understand he jumped from 1890 to 60s. But what I'm saying is he didn't touch on how the Ku Klux Klan was scaring down in the South, how the Ku Klux Klan, that's why they organized. It was a voting situation. That's why the Ku Klux Klan got organized. And also too, you got to also too look at Mississippi, Georgia, Texas, my phone ringing. All these southern states, how they were how these states were all these southern states, these deep south states, how these southerners, these southern white men, how they were scaring black people. Like I said, with the Ku Klux Klan and all these people, they were scaring the shit out of black people. So black people was forced to vote Democratic or either not go to the polls. They would say, yo, you better not go to the polls, we're going to burn your house down. Or either you vote Democrat. And that's what was happening. So that's when these GOP people, these people with GOPs, well, back then it was like, these people were just scaring black people, man. So that's how the Democratic Party came.